You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us.
How's it going? Good to see you again.
Yeah, I came on your live a few nights ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I was kind of uncomfortable about that, man. But I kind of did some research and got to talk to some of my friends. This spot, man, where I'm at, I'm like, it all came rushing in after I started talking to you. This place was the small Bigfoot capital pretty much of the world where I'm at now. It's hidden in a nice little place right by the military base. I want you to check out this. It's 2008. It was a Bigfoot. Actually was a cop impersonating a Bigfoot. And when they caught him, he had all type of raccoon skins and all type. This is a true story. It's Clayton County, Georgia, 2008. Bigfoot. A cop was impersonating a Bigfoot. We used to have so many Bigfoot sightings and stuff like that. It was just like we knew where the big one's going to be standing there every day we go to school. And it was a lot of people impersonating Bigfoot. So it was like a Bigfoot craze around here in 2008. And it was going on so wild that actually we used to make jokes like the Bigfoots were looking at the people dressed like Bigfoot crazy. So this is...
Oh, wow.
I didn't even think it was so deep, and it was a corner store on Highway 42 and Forest Parkway. I think we used to call it Rascals. It was the store had the guy would come out and wash your windows, but it still had the gas station, the old pumps like the 1930 pumps, and it used to be a Bigfoot at that store door, and people used to put the cigarette ashes out like where they had the hands open. I didn't realize it was that serious. I had to think about it. I was like, yeah, I remember this stuff, man, around here. And I was telling you about I knew I seen a Bigfoot, he can run like maybe 5 steps in a football field. Then I realized the reference for that. When we was at junior high, there used to be one standing at the end of the football field. This Adamson Junior High School in Rex, Georgia. And we used to see it every day. And then all of a sudden we were like, he's getting closer and closer. One day he's going to end up at the school. And, everybody was kind of on alert watching this thing. And one day we came out I know it was track, so it was early in the morning. It's kind of warm. And he was like almost at the end of the football field, closer to the school. And he kind of looked at us. And when he took off, I had to remember the reference. When he took off, that's how I knew it was exactly 5 steps to cover football field, because he took 5 steps and everybody, the coach and everybody was watching him, and he covered that football field and he just went off in the woods. And that was his area. He used to be out there. Back then it was like the little yellow plums and like the little bitty ones, they just grow wild and stuff like that. He used to be out there eating that stuff, but we used to see him every day. And around that area, before they built Highway 675, you could see one at his own little spot. We had gave him names and stuff. You would see him out in the past, and what time of day he would be there. And I didn't realize it was that serious, man. And then I kind of was holding back. But around here is Highway 42 and Forest Parkway in Rex, Georgia. This we used to see him so much, it wasn't even nothing no more. It was nothing. And it was a place called Tanner Church. Now that kind of, when we saw it, it used to be a big one out there. I'm like, he was the biggest one that we used to see. And he hung out at the back of this church. It's kind of like in a cul-de-sac. You really have to know where it was at. But that one right there, we kind of thought that he was watching something, guarding something right there behind this church. It had a graveyard behind it, and it was an old graveyard, but he always stood right there, and it looked like he had something back there. He didn't want nobody bothering him. He was the biggest one. He had to be about the reference I got with that, like I remember basketball goal because I just see them at the park, and I know 10 feet from the ground to the rim is 10 feet. This the average one we're seeing, and this one that we seen, he would be the headboard. His head would be as high as the headboard on the basketball goal. So I don't know if that's 13 feet or 14 feet, but he was like that. But if you check that out, man, the 2008, anything around like Clayton County, 2008, it was like a joke. It was like a joke, man. We were seeing them so much, and people would clown around. I used to see people, man, jump out in front of cars in the gorilla suits. It was actually
Oh, wow.
a lot, man, around here, man. It when they built Highway 675, that's come from a 285, and it'll be 75 going toward Florida in that direction. When they built that, I remember seeing the bridge, the construction coming when I actually walked across the bridge when it was only just that, going through the rails and the rail and all that to get to the other side. I used to hunt. When they built that, them Bigfoots, man, they came out, man, by the 10s and the 20s. You will see them everywhere. You will see just one, and you know where he'll be at it every day. He'll just be there. You know, that was his spot. You know which one it is, and we'll be in the woods, and they'll be standing around just watching you and stuff. And that was normal for us. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I've been holding this while, but I really been watching a lot of people trolling other people when they come out and try to tell somebody that guy crazy and stuff. But I don't find myself in some of the number one places in the world, man. I told you I painted Fast and Furious when Paul Walker died. I was there,
Right.
and I actually did the first burnout on a 4-wheeler in the studio.
Really? Oh, my goodness.
So
wow.
I don't care what nobody got to say about me. So I really like this because I ain't seen too many people dogging people out. But I'm telling you the truth. I feel like I'm here right now to kind of enlighten people that really have seen this and really know, because we all hitting the same key points, and we can probably come out with what we seen and match it up and do some AI and come up with a real picture of what this thing looked like. Because it's and match it up and do some AI and come up with a real picture of what this thing looked like. Because it's to other people that seen it, that know about this, it'll get kind of boring to us because we all know, okay, yeah, we know that it's only 5 or 6 different distinctive things that make this even look, how make, we can make a picture, so we can come up with a composite just by the 4 or 5 simple things that we know about it, man. I can tell you now, a lot of people are going to get bored when they see that this thing's not a monster.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
And I see it like, I've been looking, man, I feel like I can talk about it, but I see a lot of people that on the AI or in their graphics, and they're making this, the gorilla. I can see how some of this could be for money, exactly, the scare. And I can see people, if someone actually seen one or something like that, we get some pictures, I can see that people will lose a lot of money when they notice that this kind of look like your uncle that's on steroids, that's got hair all over. That's a true story. But in reference to, you looking for any proof, anything, you check that story out. That's 2008, Clayton County, a police officer impersonating. Okay. And you go from that area around, and that's going to be the rawest ground. And it's not much left, but you might can ease that way. If you know what you know, you might find one.
There's a question we're getting. Do you remember how the shoulder width of it compares to the width of the basketball goal?
I really can't. I can just remember looking at the basketball goal and seeing him behind it, and I can see that he was about tall. And like stuff like that, I'm really new to telling anybody like that, but I have been programmed sometimes to make myself think in other ways. I was taught like that in school. So if I keep trying to remember if the ears were like this and the eyes were like that, it'll ruin what I really have. So this is new to me. So one day I come out and might just tell you everything I seen, but right now I want to just kind of keep it fresh. But that one, the big one, man, the biggest one I seen, his head, the tip of his head is gonna be about the top of a basketball goal, and he is big. It's wide. I can't know if it's 3-4 feet, but he is big and no hair on his face. It kind of looked like a guy on steroids. He's got a very distinct nose, lips. You can tell that it's a person. We look like a watered down version of it. The eyes, face, and skin are kind of smoothed out. When you look at him, you're like, oh, that's a guy. You know, he looks like that. Big old flat square teeth. The only thing I can reference is somebody I remember lost the land of the lost or something.
Mm-hmm.
The little thing that they had, yeah, it kind of looked like that, and but the forehead one, like it actually looked like maybe a strong guy on Down syndrome. I hate the reference like that,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
man,
No, I've heard that from a few people before, but yeah, I appreciate you coming up again and chatting a little bit more. It's good to hear
yeah.
from you again.
Hey, thanks, brother. But in reference to that, man, this little town was the Bigfoot hotspot, and it got so bad people were actually playing games with this, and they were actually getting in trouble.
It's wild. Absolutely wild. Wow. Thank you for coming up, man.
Okay.
Good stuff. Hey, Steph, how's it?
Hi, how are you?
Great, great. Are you coming up to share a Bigfoot encounter you've had today?
Yeah, well, it wasn't today, but yes. So this would have been back in oh man, I want to say 2005 or 6, maybe even a little bit before that, 2004. I was a kid. I went to Girl Scout camp. This was I think it's in Orland Hills, Illinois. But I remember the group of girls that I was with, they kept saying that it was a very hearsay thing. We were all little kids, but they were like, oh well, somebody saw a Bigfoot in the woods, and then it was kind of snowballing into different stories, oh well, they saw different colored ones. Someone said they saw a white one, someone said they saw brown, someone said they saw black. But I remember being on a hike with all of these other girls, and I was so fascinated by potentially seeing this creature. So I remember really, really looking in the woods, and I swear I saw a brown one sitting and eating, and I turned to talk to somebody to see if anybody else had seen it. And then before I could get anyone's attention and I turned back around, it was just gone. Then there was another day at camp where I thought I saw this white one that other people were talking about, almost, I guess in my mind as a child, it came off as swinging from branches, almost like a monkey would. But now if I think about it as an adult, it probably would have been just walking and swinging its arms. But again, it was just a really, really short glimpse of it. And I've always wondered if I had just made it up or whatever because of the hearsay. But I always thought it was interesting because if you look back into I forget what it's called, but the Bigfoot archive, the map, there are sightings in that area. So I've always wondered if I had seen it or if it was just something that my brain made up.
Yeah, because this is just south of Chicago, right?
Yeah, it's southwest-ish.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's also,
there definitely are.
yeah. It's also funny, there was another guest you had the other night. He said he was in the Chicago area and that he had seen one by the river. And I grew up like very, very, very close to where he was talking about, and it would not surprise me one bit if he did see something over there, because it's a small area, but it's a very like dense forested area, and it's not like super, at least when he was talking about it, he said it was like 15 years back or so, but it's not like a super congested area. It wouldn't have been at that time. So yeah, I'm pretty sure this area is like active. It's just like very small pockets of like where it's active because of how urban a lot of it is.
Wow.
But yeah, no. Also, I wanted to just like ask your thoughts, because like I watch your TikTok live a lot, but there was another guy the other day. He was mentioning how like, or he asked you if you thought that Bigfoot was like an interdimensional creature.
Mm.
And I know like Bigfoot is associated a lot with like paranormal. So that's another thing too, is where like I have always experienced the paranormal since I was a kid. So I feel like with my encounter, like what I thought was my encounter, if that was like so a paranormal encounter versus like a true Bigfoot sighting. And I just wondered your thoughts on like, how do you feel about like, you know, the people that have these sightings? Do you think something correlates where it's like, okay, these individuals are people who may be like inclined to have like a sixth sense, or they're seeing things that other people might not see?
So, and I want to make sure I get the question right.
Yeah.
So you're asking, are you asking if there's a pattern between the type of people that have sightings like this?
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, like if people like, for like lack of a better way to put it, like if you see like spirits, or if you see ghosts, or
Okay.
other
Yeah.
creatures, yeah.
Yeah. So what I've noticed is that usually people that have a sighting, I can ask them, have you had other things happen? And more often than not, yes, they've had other things happen in their life where, they're experiencing maybe stuff that could be said as paranormal events at home. They might be able to sense things about people. There's usually other stuff going on,
Mm-hmm.
not just the one sighting of Bigfoot. So yeah, it's like they are sensitive to other things as well.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was gonna say, I mean, like, I've never been like, I've never seen like spirits. I've seen shadows and things like that. I did have a UFO sighting, but yeah, that's really interesting that like correlates. It just had me thinking about like what that guy was saying about interdimensional thing, and yeah, it's pretty interesting how like all of those things and like cryptids in general kind of coincide with that. So
Oh,
thank you for answering the
absolutely.
question.
Yeah, you got it. No problem. You're
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask you, do you know if there are any other like creators either on TikTok or maybe like Twitch or something that do pretty much what you do, but
Right. Yeah.
more
Well,
cryptid?
so let me think. So I don't know anything about Twitch, so I can't help you there, but I do know, and he's in here, so he can put a comment so you can see him. Squatch and Holler is good. Another creator,
Okay.
Parahan, so it's Para and then Han, is really good too with stuff like this.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Do you, would it be all right if I use your account on my Bigfoot podcast that I have?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Like the audio from it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for sharing, Steph, and great question.
All right, thank you so much for having me.
You got it. Good stuff. Hi there. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Great. Are you coming up to share a Bigfoot account today?
Sure. Well, my first encounter happened when I was, I think, 5 years old. Me and my mother and my sister, aunt, and cousin we're in Tennessee. And we were at this creek that was really known for Bigfoot. Like people's pigs were coming up half eaten and other animals, like they wouldn't eat the whole animal. They would just like rip them apart and just eat certain parts of them. And of course, he was spotted a lot. And a couple of people recently in the same area caught them on their house cameras. Well, when I was 5, we went to this creek to go swimming. The creek wasn't deep at all. It might have came maybe the middle of my shin at 5 years old. So we were following the creek and we came up on these huge footsteps. And at the time I was 5 years old, I didn't know anything about Bigfoot, but my mom did. And it was this really, really bad smell. Like it's a smell I will never forget, ever. It like sticks with you. So we followed the steps and there were limbs hanging over, into the creek, woods. So we come up on this one limb and there was some brown hair, like it snagged some hair off of it and it stunk so bad. Well, the footsteps went a little further and then they stopped and crossed the creek. So here we were following the steps and going to cross the creek. The creek was maybe 30 foot wide. We got about middle ways of the creek and then we heard something on the other side. And it was this, after hearing the noises on YouTube and stuff, I know for a fact that this is what it was. So yes, we heard it on the other side of the creek. And so of course we turned and was coming back across the creek we were running. My mom and us little ones were running back to the car, back to the bridge. It was chasing us on the other side and it was grunting and growling and it was the most scariest moment of my whole life. As a child, here we are running and screaming and crying and we never saw it, but we heard it. And so after we got up on the bridge and got away from it, got in the car, we never saw it, but we heard it. And so after we got up on the bridge and got away from it, got in the car, I asked my mom, I was like, what was that? It had 3 toes, just 3 toes. And I remember her telling me that was a Bigfoot. In the same area, a few years later, I was about 9 years old. My aunt, my dad's sister, lived right down the road from the same creek, and we had moved in with them. And one night, I remember my dad and my uncle, we heard something. He heard it outside. He heard something outside. So, of course, he grabbed his gun, and they went outside, and we heard a couple of shots. And then my dad and my uncle come running through the door. And all I remember is hearing him yelling, I hit it, I hit it. And they seen blood, but they never found it. They heard it yelping and stuff like that, but it had done ran so far away. Apparently, I guess they know to maybe pack mud or something to stop the bleeding because the bleeding stopped. So therefore they couldn't find it. And then I have another story. I live on the Mississippi River about an hour north of Memphis. And in this little town, a friend that worked with my husband, he saw, this was like in town, like behind the high school. Of course, it's woods, but he saw a white Bigfoot. He saw it, plain as day. It was standing right there on the side of the road. And this was probably 18 years ago, and he's still shook up about it. So, and he won't really talk about it much because a lot, how people are, they don't believe him, this and that. So he won't really talk about it much. But He swears that he saw it. And there's another incident that happened in our bottoms with he swears that he saw it. And there's another incident that happened in our bottoms with me and my husband. It was late one night, and we have a river that runs into into the Mississippi River. It's a small river called the Hatchee River. I think it starts in like Alabama and it comes all the way down through Tennessee into the Mississippi River. And we're not far from the Mississippi River where we were at on the Hatchee River. But we go down this hill and then it's a parking lot with a boat ramp where people launch their boats and stuff. And there was no one down there. We were by ourselves and we had our windows down. It was summertime. And when we went down the hill, both of our hairs just stood up on the back of our neck. The smell was unreal. And I told him, I said, I remember this smell when I was a kid. And my husband is 6'7". He's not scared of anything. But this night, it scared him enough. And I had to urinate, but I had to hold it because I was too scared to get out and go there. So we just hardtailed it. About a year ago, a good friend of mine and her good friend were riding the same bottoms, the same road. And she saw one, a brown one. She saw one leap in front of them. She said it was on one side and it took one step in the middle of the road. It just one leap and it was gone. It was on one side and it took one step in the middle of the road. It just one leap and it was gone. And to this day, she still will not go down there. And I was sitting on my front porch one night and I kind of think we have a youth Sasquatch, like a young one behind our house that kind of comes and goes. Maybe it was just coming through or something. I don't know. But it was about 1 a.m. and I had my grandkids here and we don't smoke in the house when my grandkids are here. So I was outside about 1 a.m. and I was just smoking my cigarette and I heard something and it went whoop, whoop. It did it about 2 or 3 times. And then it sounded like it picked up like 2 kind of small rocks, not big ones, and you could hear them clank. It clanked them 3 or 4 times. And I immediately knew because I do a lot of Bigfoot research. I was like, whoa, I think it's a teenage, youth Sasquatch back there. And I told my husband about it. I haven't heard it since, but I will say that around the same time, I seen a UFO hovering in the same woods, just directly behind my house, maybe 300 foot behind my house. There's just a line of woods and they're not very wide, but it was just hovering there. And then all of a sudden it just disappeared. And my son, at the time, he's 30 now, but at the time he was probably 14. He has a friend that lives on the other side of the woods, and he was walking home one night, and he was with the friend that lives next door to us. So it was 2 of them, and he seen this glowing kind of neon green human-looking thing walking towards him. And he thought it was somebody with a flashlight. So it didn't bother him at first until it got closer, until he realized this thing is glowing. And it looked human. So they come running in the house. And my son doesn't lie like that. Like he doesn't, make up stuff. Especially I could tell when my son's lying to me. His mom, I can tell. So, and they were white as ghosts. They were terrified. They were like, this thing was just walking towards us. And then they just took off running. The next 2 nights, I was standing out by the garage and I was looking out towards those same woods. And I seen a yellowish ball, maybe the size of a basketball. and it was floating in the air about midways up the trees, about in the middle of the tree line, along the field. So, yeah, that was kind of scary for us. So we definitely have one here. And when I was a kid, there was a couple that came down from Europe, and they stopped in Memphis, and they wanted to bicycle, ride their bicycles from Memphis to Dyersburg, which is a few miles from where I am, quite a few miles. They wanted to just ride their bicycles, how people just ride their bikes, travel or whatever they ride. Right. Okay. They were riding along the Mississippi River. Well, they decided to camp at the end of the Hatchee River that I was talking about, that runs into the Mississippi River. So they were on the corner of these two rivers. And so the next morning, there was a hunter that pulled up. He pulled his boat up, and he walked about 5 foot into the woods, and he seen a tent shredded. There were clothes everywhere. There was blood. And so immediately he called the police. He hung around there to see what was going on. He sat in his boat, kind of docked off of the bank a little bit, and Marines came in. They all had guns, police. I can't even explain. National Guard, all kinds of people come in with guns. Apparently, they knew what it was. They found the people shredded to pieces. Shredded to pieces. And so the man said that after they found the tent, that he heard a bunch of shooting. He said it sounded like a war going off in the woods. And then the next thing he knew, it was a helicopter. And he said it was something really huge. They pulled up out of the woods with a blue tarp over it. And he said whatever this thing was very, very big. And of course, he couldn't see because they had a tarp over it. But I already know that it was a Bigfoot because it's rumored that it was a Bigfoot that attacked these people, because there's a Bigfoot that goes up and down this Hatchee River. It lives along this Hatchee River. Now, you go a few miles up this Hatchee River, down this Hatchee River. It lives along this Hatchee River. Now, you go a few miles up this Hatchee River, probably 4 or 5 miles, and there was another incident with another person with a tent that a hunter found with the same thing. Clothes scattered everywhere, tent shredded up, and the man was shredded to pieces. And the same incident, the National Guard came in, Marines, or whatever you want to call it, Green Berets, whatever they were, I don't know. But they shot this one also, and they pulled it out with a helicopter. So I'll tell you where it's at. It's Tipton County in Tennessee. It's about an hour north of Memphis on the Mississippi River. And if you go down the Mississippi River a little bit, there's a small river that goes off to the right. It's called the Hatchee River. And so that's where a lot of our sightings are. So that was pretty scary.
Wow.
And my husband hunts down there a lot. And he was down there one night. He coon hunts. We have coon dogs. And so he said he was down there hunting one night with the dogs, and it was no wind, absolutely no wind whatsoever. But this huge tree he heard crackling and fell over. And I guess in a sense, he kind of knew what it was. So he kind of just yelled out, I'm not here for nothing, but I'm just hunting my dogs. I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to bother you. And nothing ever happened. He said it was just like it just went away. So, yeah, we've had quite a bit of experiences down in these Hatchee River bottoms with the Bigfoot.
Wow.
But with the white one, with the white one being seen in town, that was pretty crazy. And this one was solid white. But the ones that were seen down at the rivers were brown.
And
So,
Tipton
yeah,
County
I just thought
area for all
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Yes.
thank you for sharing the ones at the beginning when you're talking about the creek or the stream. Was that Tipton
Right.
County as well, or is that a different area?
That was in the next county over in Lauderdale County. That's where I was born
Yeah.
and raised up till I was 9 years old. And then I moved to Tipton County, which is south of Lauderdale County.
Gotcha. Wow, this is extremely helpful information because I don't get a lot from Western Tennessee.
Right. Well, there's definitely some here. Definitely some here.
The audio from this conversation, would I be able to use it on my my Bigfoot podcast that I have?
Absolutely. Sure.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming up and sharing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to come up and tell my story.
Hi there. How are you?
Hi, are you there?
Yeah. Are you coming up to share Bigfoot experience you've had?
Yeah, I have actually two that happened. One that I think was a Bigfoot and one that I think was a different story, but I think it might be interesting for the people that are listening. The first one was I was living in New Mexico, in rural northern New Mexico, about 30 years ago, I guess it is now. And I was driving through like around like the Los Alamos area. And it's a beautiful area. But I was, something told me to pull over to the side of the road. I don't know why. And I wound up pulling over, and there was like this, like sort of a copse of like a forest that had trees that were sort of like bent over, like they were like, I don't know, they made U-turns somehow. I don't understand it. But I thought it was kind of interesting, and I was taking some pictures. And then all of a sudden, I felt like an absolute sense, like I was in terrible danger. And, here's the thing, like I had no reason to feel that way. It was a beautiful day. I was enjoying my trip. And, I was in a good mood and everything. And suddenly, out of nowhere, and I've been following, I don't know if you know Steve Isdall.
Sure.
Yeah. And, I've been following a lot of what he says. And I'm like, I've rethought, because I thought it was like a evil spirit or something like that. But listening to Steve Isdall, how they kind of get into your head and they're territorial, I've reconsidered what I thought happened to me there, because I felt like I was trespassing on somebody's property. Like you don't want somebody to be in your backyard, and I felt like they were mad at me and they wanted me out of there. And I'm telling you, I felt like I was about ready to die. Like I had such a sense of terror for no reason, because I didn't see anything. I didn't smell anything. They say that there's usually a bad smell or something like that, but I didn't. And I was just invited out of that area. And from what I hear from Steve Isdall, I would say that they were being very nice to me, and I encountered a Sasquatch, and they didn't want me in their backyard, and they wanted me out of there. And, I would say that it was a terrifying experience, but, I think if they wanted to do me harm, they probably would have done harm to me. They just wanted me out of their territory. Now, I don't know if your audience might be interested. First of all, I don't know what you think about that story, but I mean,
it lines up with, I've heard many different accounts like that where it doesn't make sense that they start to feel the way they do, but they get a feeling like you need to leave right now. Yeah.
So now my dad was, I'm 56 years old. My dad was, in the 60s and the 70s. My dad was French Canadian from Montreal, and he was a long distance truck driver. So he spent a lot of time on the road, a lot of time in, sort of barren, empty places and things like that. And he always told a story. Now, he was a big, sort of blue collar, truck driver. Like he didn't like to sound stupid or anything like that. So he wasn't going to be telling a tall tale, but he was like, I saw Bigfoot. I saw Bigfoot. I saw Bigfoot. And, for years, when he told this story, it was terrifying. He died in 1984. It's been a long time since he's been gone. But I remember as a kid, he used to always tell this story. He was very serious. And after listening to, after giving it a lot of thought, and I'm only bringing it up because I think it's probably related to this. If people are interested in Bigfoot, they're probably also interested in feral people. And so my dad was like I said, he was a long distance truck driver. He was up in Quebec, and he pulled over on the side of the road, and, he had a bunk in the back of his truck. And, he was about to just, kind of go to sleep for the evening. And he said that, after a while, he was lying down and he heard footsteps outside the truck, like, crunching on the gravel, on the ground. And so he's like, well, he didn't think much of it, but he was like, it's probably a deer or, something, some kind of wildlife or something. And he didn't think much of it, but he said that he noticed that it circled his truck, completely circled his truck. And he was feeling a bit nervous, because that's kind of, that's a calculated move, I mean, that's the, that it kind of walked the back and it walked around, and it was obviously it was a surveillance, And he said that he really started to feel like his shackles were going up, like he was really, he did not feel good. So he really had a problem, because apparently he said that the doorknob on his passenger side, something was trying to move the doorknob. Now that's not,
my goodness,
that's not an animal.
No.
So he's like, all right, it was locked, and he was a big guy, and he was like, he was scared. He was scared. He's like, what is this? There's something out there trying to get in. And so the footsteps went to the front of the truck and stopped. Like you can hear if something moves off into the distance, And he said it just stopped. Like you can hear if something moves off into the distance, And he said it just stopped. So he knew that the thing, whatever it was standing in the front of his truck. And he said, all right, after a couple of minutes, he's like, I got to look, I can't sleep, I don't know what the hell this is, And so he turned on his headlights and he looked out the front window. And he said, now this is why he thought he saw a Bigfoot. And I don't know, you can tell me what you think, if it was a Bigfoot or if it was a feral human. He saw a man that he was wearing like a jacket and a hat, and he was wearing clothes apparently. This is a long time ago. This is the 70s and 80s, the last time I heard that story, but it never left me. Like he was wearing clothes, but he was also fully covered in fur. And his eyes reflected in the headlights of the truck. So he was furry, but he was wearing clothes. And finally, my father said, he got so scared that he blew the truck horn, the big horn. He blew it. And this, whatever it was, it went down on all fours and it ran off on all fours into the forest. And he said after that, he always stayed at a hotel after that. And so I've heard something about a loup-garou from French Canadian mythology. I think it's a feral human. Maybe it was a Bigfoot, but he was wearing clothes apparently. So what do you think about that?
So this is a tricky one. If I had to go off of my own encounters I've taken or that I've heard, I would go feral human too. But except for this, I have read a book called Where the Footprints End, and there's a section in it where there's multiple encounters of Bigfoot that are seen actually wearing different types of clothing. So that's a tricky one. I'd probably go towards Bigfoot because of what I read in that book. That is really weird though.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that story always scared me as a kid. And my dad, if we were having a barbecue, my dad would be like, I saw Bigfoot one time. Like he would tell
Right, 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 right.
he would tell that story like that. But I don't know. I mean, was it? I think what I personally encountered in New Mexico was a Sasquatch telling me to just get out of its backyard. Because there's no reason why I was having such a good time to automatically have a lightning bolt of terror when I didn't see anything, I didn't smell anything. That meant that it was in my head, like it was getting inside me.
Exactly.
But this other one was, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was a Bigfoot. Maybe it was, maybe a Bigfoot wants to wear a jacket. I don't know if it's cold. I don't know.
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I just figured I'd share. A lot of people get mad at me when I tell that story because they're like, I can't sleep now,
It's an intense one. I appreciate you sharing it. Would it be possible if I use the audio from that conversation in the Bigfoot podcast that I have?
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
fine with me.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for coming up, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.
Good stuff.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.